Hi, my name is Dr. Daniel Miller. I'm a board-certified chiropractic neurologist practicing at Complementary Medicine and Healing Arts, 27 Jennison Avenue, Johnson City, New York. Our telephone number is 607-729-0591, and you can visit us on the website at www.naturallywell.us. The topic of today's discussion is going to be functional neurology as it relates to movement disorders. The most common movement disorder that is well known, in part thanks a lot to Michael J. Fox, is Parkinson's disease. Now, individuals who have Parkinson's or a Parkinsonian type condition know that it's a problem with the basal ganglia. Now, the basal ganglia is located within our brain. There's two different types of pathways that affect the basal ganglia. One is the direct, and the second one is the indirect. The indirect pathway, into which an area of the brain called the substantia nigra pars reticulata is located. It is that area of the brain which is damaged in Parkinson's disease. Now, we're not going to get into talking a lot about the neuroanatomy associated with Parkinson's disease. We will talk about a few different tracks in very general terms, and we're going to talk about how a functional neurological approach can be very helpful for individuals who have a movement disorder. So let's get started. Functional neurology is a branch of neurology which looks at how the brain is functioning and how you're able to utilize various techniques to increase the functionality of the brain, or in some cases decrease the function of the brain, in order to bring the brain more into balance. Now, most people are well aware of the term homeostasis, and really that's what we're looking at trying to do, is to bring the brain into homeostasis. Now, to do that, we employ various different techniques, like I said, and we'll talk about those techniques. We use eye movements, we use things like metronome, listening programs, we use functional movement exercises, we use smell sometimes, as well as traditional things such as chiropractic adjustments. Now, we'll talk about all that in a little bit, but first we got to talk about when we have something wrong in our motor system, what happens? So, as we know, and we're going to use Parkinson's in this case as the example. You may have other motor conditions if you're seeing this video. It may be as simple as flat feet. If you have flat feet, you have a problem in your motor system because you have hypotonia in your feet, and that's not right. But in this case, we're going to talk Parkinson's. So when you have Parkinson's, there's a lesion. And in this case, substantia nigra pars reticulata, it's not functioning properly. And it's causing the brake to be put on, and it's causing you to slow down, to tighten up, and to lose function. Well, it's not just that area that's really involved, right? But it's a key area in the sense that it is one of the key circuits to motoricity. So once that's been damaged, now the other systems that give information or feedback back up to the brain, to the cerebellum, over to the frontal lobe, back into the basal ganglia, and down, to make that whole feedback loop going, is damaged. So now your frontal lobe area, which is that wonderful area of the brain that makes us human, starts to think, hey, I would like to move. I would like to go do that particular activity. It starts to create the plan. It's not initiating the plan, it's thought up the plan that I want to move across the room and say, hi, how you doing? But when it goes to the basal ganglia, something goes awry. And where it's supposed to take the brake off to initiate movement, it doesn't. Now, as that goes on, information that's supposed to be going through the cerebellum to smooth the movement out, to make it happen, isn't getting there right. And as a result of that, the information coming from your body up to the cerebellum to go back through the loop isn't coming up right. Now, there's three areas specifically. I'm just going to say their names: vestibulospinal, reticulospinal, and tectospinal tracts that are involved. They're related to our labyrinthine inner ear, to our head, neck, and eye movement, to our posterior muscles and limbs, the musculature. They're the parts of our brainstem in the pons that sends information up from what's going on here in us so that we can set the proper tone and we can move properly through space and be human. Those start to break down. Why? Because as we're not taking the brake off and can't move, we simply decrease our own functioning. We always, just like with everything, we move as humans to the path of ease. However, in this case, the path of ease of not moving because we're afraid is very dangerous. Why are we afraid? Because we're afraid we're going to fall. What's the #1 cause of death in any age population except like 16 to 25? Falls. So we're worried we're going to fall, break a hip, hit our head, kill ourselves somehow, so we don't do activities. As I said, things start to break down. That vestibulospinal tract, really key to protect us with certain reflexes. The reticulospinal, it's important for integrating our motor system for coordinated movement. It's not functioning right. It also helps to regulate our autonomic nervous system. If you notice, if you have Parkinson's, it's not just movement that becomes a problem. You might have been the healthiest person in the world to the day that neurologist told you, "I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, you have Parkinson's." What are the things you start noticing? Digestive problems. You might all of a sudden have to take heart medicine, not because you have arterial sclerosis, but because the autonomic nervous system isn't functioning right as a result of the reticulospinal system, and your blood pressure goes awry. When you get into the coordination of your vagal system, which again is your heart and your stomach, what also happens? Constipation, leaky gut, they start to arise. You didn't have them before, but they started to. And these are secondary things that happen as a result of having damage to the basal ganglia. So what we have to do is understand what's going on. One of the big things that happens is all our posterior elements, all these extrinsic muscles that are extensors, right? They're not getting the proper information. So we start having things like motor initiation problems. If you have Parkinson's, you know that to get to stand up takes some time. Well, why is that? Well, when those three tracks aren't working right, when we go to stand up, you have to put pressure to your posterior side in order to rise. When you're not getting that right information, that pressure starts going anterior. Two things really then start to occur. You adopt a flexed posture, right? Flexed posture of Parkinson's. And then you have motor initiation problems. You have to, with your feet maybe stutter stuck before you can get going. You start the pill rolling in order to do things, right? And then as you go to reach out, what happens? It smooths out. But to get it there, really, really hard. Well, that didn't just come from the basal ganglia. It came from the secondary events as a result of the damage to the substantia nigra. And functional neurology, it's not going to cure the problem. That's not going to be the result of coming and working functionally. But just like with if you're going through the Big and Loud program, you're going to be learning adaptive techniques that can really help to facilitate the nervous system so that you are more functional. And function is really the most important thing, right? What happens when we lose function? We lose the human experience, right? We lose the very essence of who we are. And then we start getting depressed. Well, we need our frontal lobe to be as strong as possible when we're burdening with Parkinson's or a movement disorder of any kind, right? We don't want to start losing our emotional expression, right? Because those start to lead to other health issues. So we try to address those things, right? So let's talk about that. So you come in and we do a full neurological examination on you. And we ascertain what's going on. Not in the sense that you have Parkinson's. You're already probably going to know you have Parkinson's. If you come into the office for something else, I may discover you have Parkinson's, but in this case, you're probably coming in because you saw this video, you have a movement disorder, and you want to do something about it. So we do the assessment on you, and do a full physical, and we start working on it. Some of the things we might do. You come in with a wheelchair and you're really not moving much. We start with simple things like trying to get you to move your eyes. Now, as you know, if you have Parkinson's or supranuclear palsy, you won't be able to upgaze, and if you have supranuclear palsy, you can't upgaze or downgaze, right? If it goes to that extent. If you have some of those abilities, that's great. But if you lose this ability to look upwards, it's one of the biggest integrators for your cerebellum, for your posterior muscles. Go ahead right now and just simply look up. And I want you to become acutely aware of your back. You're going to notice the back of your neck starts to tighten up. It wants to take you back into extension. It's facilitating those posterior elements. So you lose that ability to look up, you're going to wind up forward head carriage turtle posture, right? That's what's going to happen. Plain and simple. You lose that ability, right? When we talk about the tectospinal tract, right? What's the other thing that happens, right? This is a problem. As we lose these muscles, it's responsible for when you hear a looking to the side. People with Parkinson's and different movement disorders, when they hear a loud sound, they really get freaked out because they don't have the ability to quickly look to also acquire the object that might be of danger, or to see does someone need help. They can't do that, right? So another big problem. So we start very simple, right? We use the concept, we don't use sets and reps. So when I have you do things like this, I may have you do it using a metronome. Metronome work with Parkinson's is great. Why? It teaches you to move at given frequencies, a task that you're losing as a result of the damage. So if you're only ever moving slow, the chance of learning how to go faster, unless you're given some kind of auditory and visual display to help you, is going to be self-limiting. So I use, a matrix metronome. I have some for the computer too, but in this case the matrix. And it has varying frequencies, and you can use also a vision to know how to do an activity. So we might start as simple as looking straight ahead, and on each beat, look up, then down. Look up. Next beat, look down, then look up. And as we progress through it, I'm just going to turn this off because it gets a little annoying on the video. We're going to start to progress as we get things moving. We might start as we go. We also start integrating gross motor movements. Now they may have to actually start as simple as a little tapping of your feet, and it may progress also doing fine motor, single tapping here. A lot of people with movement disorders, they can tap. Tell them to tap once. Right? We want. And how do we do that? We add it to a beat. 1 beat, 2 beat, 3 beat, 4 beat. And we start to retrain the system, right? We're using the concept of neuroplasticity. And in this model, what we say is that we have to do a habituated exercise, an exercise over and over at various frequencies for at least 45 seconds in each frequency. So all the research has shown that you have to go up to at least 45 seconds. And you go, I can't do 45 seconds. That's fine. We have to build you up to get you to a state where neuroplasticity can occur. So it's fine. We start wherever we're at. So if we can only do it for 10 seconds, it's okay. We start working on to building up your system, to look at other things and how we can build you up metabolically as well as neurologically so that we can get you to better perform. It doesn't matter if you're just in a wheelchair and you can hardly move. There are things we can do to try to get things moving in a more positive direction. Okay? So as it progresses, We might then start using dynamic movement exercises. Some of these things we take from yoga, where we might have you start with like a prayer pose, put on the metronome, and what we'll do is have you bring your arms out and forward. I'm going to do this from the side, out and forward, and then bring it right up like an arching moment, bringing your eyes up, looking up over your head, arching back to stimulate those posterior muscles. And we'll set it to a metronome. Works really well at getting movement. Another example is we might use exaggerated movements. Now, what are we doing there? Well, there's a concept of feed forward mechanism that's in the brain. It's when our frontal lobe starts to just think about, I want to move. Well, every time you move, you're doing a shuffle step. Or you start to tremble and increase, right? We don't want to do that. We want to be able to have a smooth movement. So we have you think about the movement. Instead of just walking forward, we have you take a giant step forward. We have you just stand there, don't move, think about it, then lift the leg high up and step, and then begin motion. Yes, it's still a motor initiation issue, but the first thing is getting you to rebuild up the ability to initiate movement in a larger step. We teach you how to utilize visual cueing in order to help you move through space. A lot of times an individual with a movement disorder, when they look at a carpet or a hallway walking, is very, very hard to do. You may not cognitively even be aware of it. The other thing that you'll do is with Parkinson's, you'll start off walking and then you keep speeding up, right? Some of you will do that. So we actually measure out a stride length for you, and we either put chalk lines down or something, teach you how to put some dots down on the floor, and you move to those dots. And a lot of times we're using our handy dandy metronome. Why? Teach you how to reinforce how to walk at a given rate without it fluctuating, either slowing way down or progressively getting faster. Remember, you have a hard time knowing where to put that load, and the load is dynamic. It has to change. So those pressures, they have to build up. They have to shift first from standing up to from your posterior elements. Then they have to shift over to the leg that's going to first swing, right, so that we don't fall. As you've lost those abilities due to poor information coming back from those extrapyramidal systems, we have to teach you to compensate. So when people start walking too fast, right, it's because they feel like they need to keep going forward. And then what happens if you don't find ways to correct that? You fall. Once you fall, you say the heck with it, and you get into a wheelchair or you get into bed. Why? It's safe. And then you start losing functionality. You don't want to lose functionality, but fear takes over, and fear is a much more primitive emotional event, and it's going to override everything else. So one of my favorite sayings, it's not my quote, but it's one of my favorite sayings, and it really is true to functional neurology. Heaven isn't far away, it's just on the other side of fear. So I ask you, even if you have fear, go ahead and move through it. You know, there's nothing wrong with being afraid. It's what you choose to do with the fear that makes a difference. So those are just a few things that we do. We do a lot more. Notice I haven't even talked about adjusting. Some Parkinson's patients come in to see me and we don't even really do much adjusting. We may use an activator adjusting instrument to stimulate muscle spindles. It is the muscle spindles that stimulate the nervous system to help inhibit pain. So we very well may be doing some of that. We may do things where we actually load up a joint and just simply hold it, especially if there's hypotonia. If there's a lot of hypertonia, or there's more than necessarily hypertonia, but you're really, really stiff, we may do things like a warm caloric in your ear in order, on the side of tightness, to loosen that up and to allow you, at least temporarily, to do some activities. So there's really a lot of things that we can do when it comes to trying to improve your motoricity and to get more expected outcomes for what you want. So remember, as you're walking through life with Parkinson's or another movement disorder, look at functional neurology as a piece of the pie in your journey to help ease the loads that have come upon you and to allow you to have greater functionality, even if in the end you succumb to a situation. The longer you can fight, the longer you can remain functional is important, right? Because we all like to hold our children, we like to hug the grandkids, we like to go out with our friends, we like to go to church, and do the things that make us these wonderful creatures called humans. So I thank you for giving me your time today to talk a little bit about my passion, being functional neurology. Again, I started a whole program here called the Action Potential within Complementary Medicine and Healing Arts. We're starting to do some movement yoga exercises, programs for people. I have a swing hookup in my office to work on vestibular issues, and or even bringing in some people like occupational therapists, reading experts, because, you know, guess what? Parkinson's, you have cognitive faults, right? Stop reading and everything. So things we can do to help improve those activities as well. So we're located again in 27 Jensen Avenue here in Johnson City, New York. Our website is www.naturallywell.us, and check it out. I have a whole bunch of different videos on there talking about different rehab exercises and stuff. And thank you very much for your time. Be well. Have a nice day.